Hello again everyone from Tokyo, Japan, and welcome back to Japan Vintage Camera, where it's a very beautiful and warm day here at Hinokicho Park. I just had a visit from one of my friends here at the park, which is this duck, who arrived here I guess about a year or so ago, and unlike the other ducks which tend to come and go and migrate to wherever it is they migrate to, this one has decided to stay here. So often when I'm coming here to make a video or have lunch or walk my dog, I'll see her wandering around, and today she's decided to hang out close and watch me make this video. The subject of today's video is going to be another Minolta rangefinder camera. This is one of the more difficult to find cameras. This one here is the Minolta ALE rangefinder camera. For those of you who are new to my channel, I sell vintage Japanese cameras in my online store, japanvintagecamera.com. I have an Etsy store which is also called Japan Vintage Camera, so if you're interested in buying this camera or another vintage Japanese camera, please visit one of my stores. I'll post links to my stores in the description below the video. So the Minolta ALE was one of the compact rangefinder cameras which came into popularity in the late 1960s, early 70s. This particular one comes from 1968. It was designed to compete against cameras like the Canonet QL17 and I guess like the Yashica GX and a few others. And basically these were compact rangefinder cameras with shutter priority automatic operation and a fast 40mm lens. And this has all those attributes. It's compact, it has the 40mm lens and the shutter priority automatic operation, as well as full manual operation. This camera was designed to replace the ALS, which was the previous version, and the ALE has a few improvements. Mainly the CDS light meter, which uses a battery and is more accurate than the selenium light meters which came on earlier cameras. Overall, the shape and style and feel of the camera is a lot like one of the classic high-matic rangefinder cameras, like say the 7, 7S, and 9, and 11, but in a more compact design. It makes this camera a little bit lighter to use, a little bit lighter to carry, and its shutter priority automatic operation system makes it a little bit easier to use. The high-matic cameras have a little bit more complicated operating system. This camera is probably better suited for amateur photographers and is especially good for people who like to shoot handheld. Let's go ahead and take a look at the features, controls, and functions and how to operate the ALE. We'll go ahead and start at the top here, and here we have the film rewind knob, which looks a lot like the ones which come on the regular high-matic series, except it's a bit smaller, and of course it has a pop-out arm with a roller tip to make it easier to rewind the film. Next we have a shoe for mounting a flash gun, and this is a hot shoe flash, so it's quite easy to adapt a modern flash to this camera. If you're going to use a flash on this camera, follow the instructions on the flash, and it's not really that hard to do. Next to that we have the, meter needle, which shows the aperture which the camera recommends for whatever shutter speed you have set. It's kind of a simple system, and you have to kind of look at it from the top down. There's a green arrow which moves, and maybe you can see it moving as I cover and uncover the light meter window. When you select a different shutter speed, the light meter will choose the best aperture setting for it, and if you're shooting in the automatic mode like it is here, it will automatically choose the best aperture. If you're shooting in the manual mode, you would simply choose whichever aperture the camera recommends. Right now it's recommending f8, so at 125th of a second, so set it like that and the camera would be ready to shoot. Very simple and very easy to use. Next to that we have the shutter release button, which accepts a standard cable release, and over here we have the film counter window. On the back here we have the viewfinder eyepiece, and the viewfinder in this camera is a little bit simplified compared to the same Minolta High-matics. In the regular Minolta High-matic, you can see the light meter readings within the viewfinder located to the right side as you're looking through, so you don't have to take your eyes away from the viewfinder when you are making adjustments. As this camera is a more compact design, they couldn't fit that feature in to this design, so they simply had it added up here. But on the other hand, it makes the viewfinder less cluttered and with less things to divert your attention from what you were trying to focus and compose. Next to that, we have this very smooth and quiet shutter winding, or shutter cocking and film winding lever. And having on the back here kind of makes the top of the camera look a bit cleaner. A pretty good design, and it was very popular on the other Himatic cameras. On the front of the camera here, we have the viewfinder window and the rangefinder window. This is a lot smaller than on the full-size Himatics because this camera also doesn't have the projected frame lines. You just simply compose your shot and frame it within what you see in the viewfinder and not using the frame lines. Some photographers prefer this system. Some photographers prefer the frame lines. It's mainly a matter of choice. I've tried both ways, and there are benefits to both ways. With the projected frame lines, you could kind of see what's outside of the frame lines, and if you're like shooting at moving objects or don't want to be caught by surprise when something walks into your field of view, they're kind of nice to have. Whereas on the other hand, the regular ones, the finders which are blacked out at, say, the 50mm or 40mm focal length, they show a pretty much more exact I guess, idea of what you're going to get on your photograph. So the one photographer I know, though he has, or I guess he's in a photography, he passed away years ago, but he used to shoot a Leica M3, which everyone loves because of its viewfinder and its frame lines and parallax correction. But he didn't like this system because it didn't allow him to compose as precisely as he liked. So he fit an earlier viewfinder on the top, which blacked out everything which wasn't going to be shown on the image, and that was just the system which he loved to use, and he's one of the best photographers I've ever seen, so I guess it worked quite well in his case. So though this doesn't have the projected frame lines or parallax correction, that doesn't mean you can't take very good pictures with this camera. Over here on the right here we have a switch here, and we have a three-way switch. V is normally for a self-timer setting. We have the red dot here, which is the on switch, or the camera is ready to operate. And when you switch over to the L here, that will lock the shutter button so you can't accidentally, or don't accidentally take a photograph. So when you're going to operate the camera, just line up the red mark on the dial to the red dot here in the middle, and the camera is ready to go. On the lens body here on the bottom, we have this focusing tab. It's a white plastic focusing tab, and it's placed perfectly. Just to catch your finger. The focus throw on this is very short, so you don't need to turn the lens a lot one way or the other, which is an issue I have with some cameras. I love like the interchangeable lens Nikon rangefinder cameras, but you really have to crank the lens one way or the other to get it between infinity and close focus. Whereas with this camera, it's quite simple, and the 40mm focal length is a little bit wide, something between the 35mm wide angle and the standard 50mm lens. So you know it has enough depth of field that you don't have to have a whole lot of focus throw between infinity and close focus. Next we have the aperture ring, and since you're going to be using this a lot if you're shooting in the manual mode, it has tabs on either side. And it also makes it easier to tell the difference between the shutter speed ring and the aperture ring, because the aperture ring has these black plastic tabs on either side and the shutter speed ring doesn't. We have a very simple setup for the aperture and shutter. We just have four numbers, f1.8, 4, 8, and 16, and we have a limited number of shutter speeds. This is just like the Canonet QL17 with 1/8 of a second through 1/500th of a second, except that the Canonet QL17 has a bulb setting, which this camera unfortunately does not have. On the bottom of the camera we have a dial here which you would turn to set or adjust the camera to the film you have loaded in it. And we have a film speed range of ASA 25 to 500. Nowadays we don't have a lot of different options when it comes to film speed. In the past you could get 3200, 6400 speed film. Nowadays you're kind of limited to 400, sometimes 800 if you can find it. So this is perfectly suitable for the film we most commonly find nowadays. We have a focusing scale here which is arranged in both meters and feet. so comfortable to use in America and everywhere else. And on the bottom here we have a sink for attaching a flash cord, which is handy if you're using a flash in a remote location, or you're using an earlier bulb type of flash which doesn't work with the hot shoe on the top. On the bottom of the camera we have a button which you use to unlock the winding mechanism, so you can rewind the film. We have a standard 1/4-inch tripod socket, and here we have the battery cover. This, like the other Minolta cameras of the era, used a Mercury MR9 battery. You can use a PX625 alkaline battery without an adapter, and that will work. You can use SR44 or LR44 batteries with an adapter. If you want the more accurate voltage, you can get the adapter with a diode which steps the voltage down from 1.5 to 1.3 volts. You can also use wine cell batteries, which are the correct voltage out of the box. Unfortunately, they don't last very long. And if you happen to be in Russia, you can actually get MR9 batteries in Russia. Someone over there started making them again. They contacted me asking me if I was interested in buying them or reselling them. And at first I was, because I really like these batteries, because first they are very stable. And the cameras were designed to use them. They have really long life. For example, a wine cell might last 2 or 3 months. An LR44 or SR44 battery may last a year, 2 years, like a PX625 battery. But an MR9 battery will last for years and years. I still come across old cameras like Nikon F1s or things like that, and I switch them on and the meter still works, despite having a 10 or 15-year-old or even older MR9 battery in it. So that's a wonderful thing about those. But unfortunately, my Russian friend was wanting $20 each for her batteries, which I thought was a little bit steep. And also I wasn't sure if I could import Mercury batteries into Japan. It might be, if they're like installed inside a camera, no one's ever really going to know the difference. But if you have them packed in, say, blister packs or whatever, and shipping from there to here, in Japan, they pretty much every package which comes into the country is open. So I decided I'll go ahead and pass on them, and I'll just kind of endure the shorter life of the more common batteries. For those of you who are interested, the best possible battery option for one of these cameras is a MR9 adapter with the diode which stops down the voltage to 1.3 volts, and an SR44 battery, a quality SR44 battery, something like a Toshiba or Panasonic battery. There are a lot of really crappy ones which are being, I guess, mass-produced in China, and the quality is hit and miss. Some of them are really good and some of them are really awful. Save yourself the trouble and just get a good name brand battery. And it'll work much better in a camera like this or one of the other 1.3 volt batteries, or battery-powered cameras. Anyway, that's it for my video on the Minolta ALE rangefinder camera. I hope to have this listed for sale in my stores shortly. If you're interested in buying it, please, once again, click one of the links in the description below the video. I plan to make another video or two this week. If you'd like to see these, please come back or subscribe. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope you tune in again soon.